Shalom, giving all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kadash. Double honors and respect to our apostles and elders, a great millstone, who rule well and taught us this truth. I would also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in the one third, his brother Salah, and Amon Artazadis. Hopefully, this lesson will be edifying. And today, this is gonna be a World War III update. I've been looking at these videos for the past few days, and they just keep popping up. Like every few hours, man. And the elder apostle Tahar is right, man. You miss like a couple of hours, and you see something new pop up on the news, right? But the skinny of it is basically right. Right. China, Russia, man. They aid in these small countries, Venezuela, and they're also aiding Canada as well because Caesar Nero, aka DJT, he's sending in all, he's placing all these tariffs around these other countries, right? So and they have no choice, but to rely on China and Russia, mainly China, for that economic support. But now, they're allowing troops to be stationed there. Right. And that's basically and that's World War III right there. Once and on top of that, right, because Babylon, the great, is placing all these tariffs on not just the enemy countries, but their allies. Because DJT is using it under the guise of putting America first, but really, his agendas online. With these small hats, these wicked elites, right? As the banking elites, their mo is to in fact collapse, the U.S. reserve currency, which is the dollar, in place, for that digital dollar, right? Jumping into Revelation 13, chapter verses 60 on down, with that MOTB, that's the whole mo. That's why you have all these these psyops, with CK. I'm not gonna exactly say it because that they're getting ready to to censor the internet, which is going to be the family of the word, and I'm just roughly paraphrasing some of these scriptures. Yeah, but basically, a lot of things are popping up, and that's and now we should really be paying attention to the news now more than ever because this third world war's about to pop out, and on top of that, right, we the brothers, I've seen from the brothers from the Saints of Jersey, they Esau, using his telescope, looking at the sun, they saw a giant object pass through the sun, man, and guess what that is, man? That's Yahweh Shai, man, and the fathership. So we are very very close to the end, right? Right. All right. So before I play I'll play any of these videos. Let me start off with the opening scripture. This is the book of Romans, chapter 13, starting at verse 11, and that knowing the time is Salaki, and that knowing the time that now is high time to wake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we believed. The night is far spent, and the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light, pertaining to a book of Ephesians, chapter 6. Talking about the armor of God or the armor of Yahweh. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not Salaki, not in rioting and in drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying. Yeah, and that's right, man. What are we supposed to practice, man? We're supposed to practice that self control, man. Man, because these crash out spirits are out here, man. That's really, and that's really the time, now that we are to rely on Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man, because we're really gonna need him during these times of Jacob trouble that's about to happen, man. All hell, all sorts of madness is about to break loose, man. But before I play the first video, I'm gonna get the copyright disclaimer. All right, so copyright disclaimer to Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So with that, we're gonna play. We're not gonna play all these videos. We're gonna play like the first parts or important parts. But for this one, for this video, as you see here, geopolitical economy report. Trump cannot stop BRICS. Plans to exploit to Trump cannot stop BRICS, so he plans to exploit U.S. allies, right? And we already know what scriptures that's going to go into, but I'm going to play this segment, to show the receipts, and then we're going to get into scriptures. All right, so without any further ado, here it is.
Europe.
By the way, Michael, the director of trade for the EU Commission, who's a German politician named Sabine Weyand, she did an interview with the German media, and it did not get any attention in English because it wasn't really translated by the mainstream corporate media. But there are some very revealing quotes in this interview from the person who oversaw these so-called negotiations. She admitted that there were no real negotiations. She said, quote, "If you didn't hear me say the word negotiation, that's because there wasn't one," end quote. So in other words, the US imposed its terms on Europe and they simply accepted it. And why is that? This top EU official admitted in the interview, quote, "We are completely dependent on the United States," end quote.
And that's it right there, man. As you see here, we are completely dependent on the United States, and that's and these are coming from economists or people that that deal with trade in the EU, man. So what you're witnessing right now is the breaking of the 10 toes, man. You're about to witness the beast, talking about NATO and the EU, man, going back to the Roman Empire. You're about to witness them hating the whore, man. And as Caesar Nero pushes out these tariffs, man, what's going to happen. It's going to force their allies, and you're already starting to see it right now. It's going to force their allies eyes to turn to the BRICS, and all of them, man, they just going to simply turn on Babylon. Once they drop this once they drop the MOTB, man. So I'll display for a little bit more.
Those were the words of a top EU official. So when they're speaking in their native languages, not when they're speaking in English for the US media, but when they're speaking for the German media, they acknowledge some of these inconvenient truths. But then, of course, they're not second guessing their extreme Atlanticism.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. And you're right.
All right, so that's basically all you need to hear, man. So that basically confirms that it was a top EU official. Oh, that basically it admits that it needs Babylon the Great, right? So let's get some precepts right here. We're gonna jump to the book of Daniel, chapter 2, starting at verse 40. All right, it's talking about Rome and the fourth. Daniel chapter 2, starting at verse 40 down to 43, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall break in pieces and bruise, and whereas as thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it in the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken, and that's what you see right now. You know let because these countries, right, these NATO EU's countries rely on so much trade with Babylon, right? Right, they're just they're simply willing to accept whatever tariffs Babylon the Great throw on the EU, right? But eventually it's gonna get to a point where they're just gonna freaking turn on Babylon, on because it's already known that, or it's already been admitted that that the U.S. is responsible, for destroying the Nord Stream pipeline, between Germany and Russia, right? Because Europe basically needed that oil, to keep to keep the EU going. Now they're just buying that oil straight from India, because India just simply buys that oil from Russia, and then India just resells it to the EU, right? And it just makes it more inconvenient for them. So eventually, the EU, they're just simply gonna get fed up with Babylon, and they're just gonna say, what, fuck it, we're just, they're gonna dish their relationships, with Babylon, with America, right? Which is basically gonna isolate America, and join BRICS, and again, once this MOTB starts popping off, right? They're just gonna see more problems coming from Babylon, and it's just gonna get to the point, but where they're gonna fire these nukes, right? Jumping to Isaiah, right? All right, so this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 4, verse 9. It says here, hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath rised up from the thrones of all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like it unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, and the worm is spread under thee, and the worm cover thee. And the worm represents decay, and that's what you see with Esau, Edom's kingdom, right? We are witnessing the downfall of the empire, right? That's why, Babylon the Great is in desperation mode, trying to, trying to maintain, its hegemony with the world reserve currency, right? That's why you see them treating their allies, such as Canada, South Korea, Japan, by imposing all these tariffs. They want to maintain that image of hegemony, but all that's doing is basically isolating themselves, and this is all planned by the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bashim Shai, man. You, through, through the Ruach Hakodesh, man. Through the Holy Spirit, because because basically, right. Right, this is basically prophecy playing out before your face, man. These things is basically what's gonna add up to the downfall, right? All to Babylon, right? Now the other nations, right? Like not now. So like now people around the world, people in China, people in Russia, people in Africa, man, and even people that, and even other Edomites within Babylon and NATO, they're starting to realize that, hey, man, these so-called European, white or Edomite ruled countries, they're not as strong as they used to be, man. And that's because of the devaluation of the U.S. dollar, which is part of the fractional reserve banking, which goes into debt, and we're gonna explain that, later in the video, right? Right, but for now, right, this, right, we're basically, seeing that, the downfall of Esau's kingdom, which is the revival of the Roman Empire. That's why you see all this left right paradigm. The two horns like a lamb and spake like a dragon. And as it says in the book of Revelation, that's again, that's why you see all these psyopses, which is eventually, leading up, to rights being, to freedom of speech being taken away, and eventually, getting the ministry blamed, right? As the elder Yashawamba says, and the you know and the the rest of the brotherhood, they're they're basically saying that all this is going to get tied to hate speech, right? And what's this going to lead to is eventually going to lead to the persecution of the prophets and eventually the famine of the word, right? Right, and basically after that, all hell is gonna break loose, and eventually, we're just gonna see we're gonna see them roll out the MOTB ban, and but but best believe within the midst of all that. In the midst of the MOTV getting rolled out, man, there's still gonna be mass uncontrolled chaos. Even though Esau rules by order of Caleb, Esau's not gonna be able to contain the chaos that he started. But because why? Because this is the collapse of his empire. This is his last hurrah before Esau and the rest of these heathens go into captivity, right? All right, so this is the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 16. And it says here, and the 10 horns were sawed upon the beast. These shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that's exactly what's gonna happen, man. Once you, once the MOTV rolls out, man. Right? NATO, NATO and the EU, they're gonna side with the BRICS, and then all of them are just gonna launch their ICBMs, their nuclear missiles all the way to Babylon the Great, and once they do that, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, Yahushai coming in with his father, he's gonna beam up the elect, the 1/3, out of America, while the 2/3 and Esau and the rest of these heathens get burned here. And once we get the new spiritual bodies, man, that's New Jerusalem right there. That's the elect. That's us having the loss written in our inward parts, and we're never gonna go off ever again. That is the second covenant. That is the New Jerusalem that's gonna come out of heaven. With the Lord's will being done on earth as it is in heaven. As it says which I believe in. It says in the book, in the book of Mark, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look that up real quick. No, Slovakia. It was in the book of Matthew. It was in the book of Matthew, right? Yahushua said that in the red letter. So just as it says in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, it's the Lord's will be done on earth as it is in heaven, man. Was it Matthew chapter 6? Yeah, it was Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. And that's basically gonna be the kingdom of heaven. Once the elect 144,000, and get beamed up into them chariots, with Yahweh Shai, man, and then they're gonna come down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? And right, which we're gonna get into right now, man. Man, these nations, man, they're getting ready for battle, right? China and Russia, right? They're defending. They're actually defending not only are they defending their allies like Venezuela, but also defending the U.S.'s allies as well, like such as Canada, because of these tariffs, right? Right, and they're also setting up. And I've heard, if you watch the Slocky, if I keep stuttering, I'm really tired from work. But if you watch this video right here from Geopolitical Economy Report, or they basically talk about I believe somewhere in the video they talk about Russia and China setting up shop or setting up base at or near Alaska, man. So this World War III is definitely gonna pick up a lot, man. And not only that, but now China is basically at the is at the Canadian border, right? They're China's setting up military bases in Canada, right? Right. So so now you have Russia and China in Canada, and they're also in Venezuela. So basically Babylon the Great is surrounded. So once Jacob's trouble pops off, man, you best believe they're gonna take this opportunity to invade in the midst of all this chaos, man. And America, just like ancient Rome, America, Babylon the Great, they're gonna be stretched thin, man. And so let me play this video, so I don't keep rambling on. I'm just gonna play it for a little bit. I'm not gonna play all the video footage. So let's see.
Media and analytical circles have been actively discussing a move that until recently seemed impossible. Canada, one of the key allies of the United States and a NATO member, is preparing for an unprecedented political and military maneuver that could upend the established balance of power in North America. According to sources close to the government in Ottawa, official military delegations from China have arrived in the country for the first time in history. The very fact of Chinese officers visiting Canada, especially at a time when tensions between Washington and Beijing have reached their peak, has shocked both experts and political insiders. The situation appears particularly acute against the backdrop of strained relations between Canada and the United States following the rise of Donald Trump to power. It was Trump who did everything to erode the trust that had been built between Ottawa and Washington over decades. According to commentators at the Washington Post, the White House's rhetoric, which included humiliating statements about Canada as a weak partner that should become a new state of America, marked a turning point. Tariffs, trade restrictions, and public Wall Street Journal, Canadians are tired of constant pressure from the United States and decided to show that if America continues to act like a dictator, Ottawa is capable of changing friends and finding a new partner in China. Experts note that Canada's move operates on several levels. First, it is a demonstration of independence, a signal to the domestic audience that the country will not tolerate humiliation. Second, it serves as a bargaining tool, pressure on the US to reconsider trade and economic terms. And third, it is a strategic message. If Washington tries to squeeze Canada even harder, Beijing is always ready to lend support. The situation is developing rapidly. According to Kyoto News, a series of new contacts between Canada and China are planned in the coming months, from cultural forums to economic delegations. Insiders also report that Beijing intends to offer Ottawa long-term investments in infrastructure and green energy, sectors that are critically important to the Canadian economy.
All right, so we're just gonna stop it right there, man. So we're basically seeing the United States getting surrounded by China in its northern borders. Let's see what's happening in the southern borders.
Trump, speaking at a rally in Texas, announced an expansion of the U.S. military presence off the coast of Venezuela. Within just a few days, satellite images published by Naval News confirmed the arrival of a full U.S. strike group in the Caribbean, led by the aircraft carrier USS George Washington. This decision provoked a sharp response in Caracas, where Maduro called the U.S. move a declaration of a hunt and an attempt at the physical removal of the head of a sovereign state. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Caracas with banners reading "No to U.S. invasion," while state television broadcasted Maduro's address, in which he promised to fight to the last bullet. However, as Financial Times reports, a new player unexpectedly entered the conflict: China. According to official statements from Beijing, dozens of Chinese naval vessels were dispatched to the Atlantic to conduct joint exercises and protect trade routes. Sources within the Chinese government cited by South China Morning Post claim that this is not merely symbolic presence, but direct military support for Venezuela.
And you see that right there, man. I'm telling you, we are very, very close to the midst of World War III. America is literally getting surrounded right now. By both China and Russia. It's just showing China right now, but you best believe Russia is gonna be there as well. and this basically expands on this on expands on the same rhetoric as with China and Russia providing aid to Venezuela. But all right. In this video, I'm not gonna play this video at all. I'm just gonna summarize what happened in this video. But basically, Qatar joins BRICS because basically what happens is the United States they did not provide aid to Qatar when them small hats, right? I'm not gonna say you already know you already know who, you already see the picture when the small hats attack Qatar. Of course the United States they took a while to respond, and they didn't even help Qatar. So because Qatar didn't get that protection it was promised by the U.S. because that's why they're allied with them in the first place. That's why they're dealing with the petrodollar. Hence why it's called the petrodollar, because they're not being provided that protection. They're deciding to drop the world reserve of currency, which is the dollar, and decide to join BRICS, switching to the yuan, right? And that and that take and the preach of that pops in my mind is never trust thine enemy, man, for as iron rusteth so does his wickedness, man. Man, you cannot trust dealing with this devil, man, because because Esau, man, he will ultimately screw you in the end, and and of course Esau's doing all this, man. He's doing all this madness in order to in a foolish attempt to get that birthright back, but Esau, man, the damn devil, he's not gonna get that birthright back. And right here, I haven't seen this video yet, but as you see in the title, right, China sends troops to the Middle East, man. So that's basically World War III right there. So let's jump straight to the scriptures, man. All right, this is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 7. It says here, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They have eat thy bread and have lain a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, right? Right, and that basically proves the point, right? There is no understanding. Babylon the Great, Caesar, Nero, they're making irrational decisions by tariffing, by putting massive amounts of tariffs on their own allies, man. Like you see with Canada, like you're seeing with like you're seeing with South Korea and Japan. And what they're starting to do, they're starting to freaking retaliate, man. They've had enough. So that wound that they're laying underneath them is by what being joined onto enemies. The BRICS nation, right? Right, and that takes me to the book of Isaiah. It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 46. We're gonna start at verse 10, declaring the end from the beginning and from the ancient times, the things that are not done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure, calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yeah, I have spoken it. It will also. I will also bring it to pass. I purpose it. I will also do it. Right, and this is talking about me. And that ravenous bird was, at this time was talking about Medo Persia taking down Babylon, which is what happened. But Yahweh Bashim, he's using that exact same playbook. Today with modern day Babylon or the daughter of Babylon or Babylon the Great, right? Which who Babylon the Great is and that ravenous bird from the east, right? It's talking about Medo Persia, but instead of them Elamites, them Iranians, it's also going to be Gog, Magog, Russia, and it's going to be China. In India, man. So Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, he's bringing all these Eastern nations, against against America, right? That's why I see China and Russia being stationed at being surrounded by by the borders of Babylon, right? Because Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, he's about to call down that third woe, right? How in the book of, so how in the in the book of Deuteronomy, how when Israel was was taken captive by Esau, and Esau was was called that swift eagle. Well, now the Lord, now the Lord is sending that these eagles from the east, man. To take you devils down, and let's get that real quick, let's substantiate the point. All right, all right, so we're gonna jump around a bit, right? Right, and Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 7, and the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and upon them that hate thee, which persecute thee. And I'll jumping back to Deuteronomy 28. The Lord Yahweh Shem Shai shall bring a nation against thee from afar and from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flight, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, right? And for Israel's case, right, that was Esau. Yeah. And these other nations putting us into them cargo slave ships, bringing us, here in North America, which is, which is Babylon the Great, right? Right, but but what's happening now, right? Yahweh Shem is sending these eastern countries, right? That ravenous birth from the east, right? Right, Russia, China, they're all getting sent to America, all right. That's and they're basically and they're basically gonna help take down Babylon the Great. They're help breaking this place down. Basically what happened in ancient Rome, right? Because when Rome was about to fall, they kept constantly getting invaded. Invaded by foreigners from the east, right? And the same thing is basically happening today, man. Yahweh Shem Shai, man, and that's that. That's how that's how the Lord does require is requiring things to pass, because what he did before, he's doing it now, man. So. No, all right. So all right. This is the book. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, and verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put. Actually, we're gonna start at verse 1. And the word of the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai came to me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, in the land of Magog, chief prince, which you read chief prince, it goes in the word Russia, Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against them, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, and chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. I will bring thee forth and put thine army in horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them holding swords. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, all of them with the shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, in the house of Togam on the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee, and be thou prepared, and be prepared for thyself, and thou all and thou and all thy company are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them, and that's what Russia is doing, man. They're being a guard unto the BRICS nation, along with China, right? Right, Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe. Philistia triumphed out because of me. Yeah, and that's basically what you're seeing right now. China and Russia, invade. They about to invade Babylon the Great, man. and they about to invade Rome 2.0, man. Which is America. Once this third wall pops off, man. Once the dollar ultimately collapses because all their allies they can't deal with the dollar because of these tariffs, right? And that's all by design because once as soon as these nations drop that dollar, then that's when Caesar Nero is gonna roll out the agenda with the MOTB, which is what the infrastructure has been building up to. With Palantir, being piloted off with the CK incident, man. That's basically them using their reason, right? It's becoming a whole regime change aims to usher in that their MOTV, right? Right. We're gonna jump to the second Ezra chapter 15 verse 29, where, where, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth. Earth that all they which hear them may fear and tremble, right? And if you go to Joel chapter 3 verse 2, I'll also gather the nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, meaning Yehoshaphat, meaning Yahweh's judgment, and will plead with them. And that word plead goes into the word judge, shapatyum, shapat, with them there for my people and for mine heritage Israel, Yasher Allah, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land, right? So the Lord, man, Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, he's getting ready to to gather all these nations, man. Man, right here in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, man, they're gonna fight each other, but once Yahushai cracks the skies, once the elect, come beat me down, once Babylon gets fucking destroyed with the ICBM nuclear missiles, after the MOTV gets rolled out, man, Yahweh Yahushai, man, and the elect, they gonna fucking tear through these nations, man. You best believe that. And that's the fate of these heathens, man. He that leads in the captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints, as it says in the book of Revelation, man, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Revelation 13, verse 10. I'll verse 9. 9 through 10. Yeah, right. Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen, right? And all right, now jumping back to South Korea and Japan, right? All right, basically, the skinny of it is and I'm not gonna play the video. You can watch the video yourselves. But basically, right, the skinny of it is South Korea, the just like what's going on with Canada and Japan, right? They're being forced to pay these tariffs. On top of that, South Korea offered to open up one of their factories, to help industrialize Babylon, right? Right, but guess what? They're workers, right? They're technicians, the ones that are supposed to to train Americans, Edomite Americans, and other Babylonians, how to use the machinery, how to use these high tech machines in order to assemble these Hyundais, right? What did America do? They deported them. They treated them like slaves, put them in chains, and humiliated them. And that's why these Moabites from South Korea. That's why that they're pissed off, man. Man, and they're basically mad at none other than Caesar Nero, who right? Yeah, so you best believe, right? Japan, South Korea, and Canada, man. They're all of them are about to are about to join BRICS soon. And what America is doing, right, it's they are still trying to hold on to that. You know, to that world hegemony. You know, they are still trying to hold to that. That world, hegemony image. By making countries, like South Korea and Japan, vassal states, by them owing that money, but eventually, they're just gonna put their foot down as well, like Canada, and say, fuck it, man, and eventually they're gonna align with BRICS and China, man. So now we're gonna jump to First Maccabees, is chapter 1, or sorry, verse 1. And it happened after that, Alexander the son of Philip the Macedonian came out of the land of Chipton, and had smitten Darius king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead first over Greece. And this is when the Edomites, first had their first foothold in the world. Was through Alexander, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. Just like what America's doing, right? What they did, and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was assaulted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him, vassal states. Right? Right? And that's what Babylon's trying to hold on to. Is their hegemony, or their quote unquote Edomite superiority, man, which what the Lord gave them through the blessing of the sword, which is what Esau was blessed with. Right? Right, and basically, how is he ruling them? Through fractional reserve currency, which is what, a debt based system, right? Right, and again, why does Esau want these nations in perpetual debt? Is so he can default on their debt, and make them perpetual slaves to, by them owing debt, because eventually he wants to get that birthright back, which is a foolish attempt, right? And that, by Esau trying to do that, the Lord's basically gonna fucking destroy him, man. All right, so this book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that laid himself with thick clay. And if you go to the word thick, thick clay, it goes into the word ibotnia, which means what? Debt. That fractional reserve currency, that, that debt building up, and that's the enterprise. And let's get that. Let's get that precept. Enter. This is the book of Job, chapter 5, verse 12. He disappointed the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. Right. Right. So let's see what that word enterprise goes in the blue letter.
Strong's H 8454. Tushia. Tushia.
Tushia. Let's see. Wisdom, knowledge, success, sufficient. Wisdom, abiding, efficient, abiding success. Right. All right. So all right. Define. Enterprise, a project or an undertaking, typically one that's difficult or requires effort. A business or company, right? And their whole enterprise, right, is to try to rule everything through debt. So that they put the people in perpetual debt. So that they can try to claim that birthright. But again, right? Well, what did the scriptures say? And this was also in the book of Job. This is the book of Job, chapter 20, verse 22. In the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him, and the hand of the wicked goes into what, the labor or the wretched one. I forgot how it says in the Paleo Hebrew. But actually let's get that right now. Job 20, verse 22.
Strong's H 6001. A male. A male.
Amal, laborer, sufferer, wretched one. Amal. Well, so as soon as he starts, Michael Ciaping everyone, that's when the people are gonna fight back, rebel, and that's also when these nukes are gonna find and freaking destroy man, and destroy Esau, man. When he Job chapter 20, verse 23. When he is about to fill his belly, Yahweh shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him and shall rain it upon him when he's eating. And that's exactly what the fuck's gonna happen when Esau attempts to chip Michael C up the elect, man. But the Lord Yahweh Bashim Messiah is not gonna let that happen. And we always say, Lord willing, Yahweh Bashim Messiah with the Zah, man. That that we may be part of that number. All right. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, verse 7. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations are drunken over wine, therefore the nations are mad. And you see these nations are pissed off, because now they're feeling the blunt force or the shortened, these economic deals that Babylon's giving, with these tariffs, man. And so. What are these nations getting ready to do, man? These nations are getting ready to attack, right? And going back to South Korea, and you could also love, Ammon and Moab, China and Japan with this as well. This is the book of Second Ezra, chapter 15, verse 46. And thou, Asia, thou art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her persons. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that has hated all her works and inventions. Therefore saith Yahweh, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death. And ultimately, that's gonna happen in this third woe, man, World War III. That's why Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man. He's setting Moab there, man. 144, call law Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. He's setting Moab there along with Gog, Magog. Russia, to ultimately destroy all these nations. Why? Because all these nations, man, have drunken off the wine of Babylon the Great. So here's what's getting ready to happen, right? Revelation chapter 11, verse 18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, which they should be judged, and thou shouldest given the reward unto thy servants the prophets, and unto the saints, and to them that fear thy name, small and great. And thou shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And you best believe Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man. Once the elect get those spiritual powers in the new bodies, with Yahweh Shai and King David at the front, man, we gonna destroy these nations, man, and put them into captivity, man. And all right. So so with that, we're gonna end off the lesson right there. Hope this lesson's been edifying. To you Akim and if you Akwath. With that, I like to say call Halayim La, Abanawa, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Ruka Kadash. Double honors and respect to our apostles and elders, the great millstone who will taught us his truth. I also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in the 1/3, Brother Salah. And with that, I like to say Shalom.